At this time in the church calendar, in this year, we're going to hear readings from John, like we heard today, and Acts and Revelation. So those are the parts of the Bible that we're going to be hearing from for the next few weeks. So we're going to spend some time on these three books, focusing on different parts. Today we're going to spend some good quality time in Revelation, and we'll probably spend that quality time in the next few weeks as well. So we're going to talk about Acts and Revelation primarily today. So we're going to spend some time getting a little background, a little idea of what this book of Revelation is all about. Because it's a book of the Bible that's exciting. It's a book of the Bible that's talked about a lot and written about a lot. And strangely, you're going to notice that a lot of our liturgy, a lot of our songs come from Revelation. People like Handel and Bach were fascinated by it and wrote some music based on Revelation. But before we get to that, I want to take you on a couple imaginary journeys, if you would. Okay? So imagine you're at an art museum. And on the wall of this art museum are three things that look like windows to the outside world. And one is a window to the outside world. It's just a window you would see anywhere else. And the outside world is presented just as it is, because it's just glass. But right next to it is one that's a thermodynamic image. So not only do you see the outside world, but you see what parts are hot and what parts are cold. So it's the same world, but you're looking at it in a different way. And the third one is the Picasso window. Through computer generated, they just take the outside world and make it cubist, like a Picasso painting. It's still the outside world, but it's a different view of the outside world. Okay? Now, another thing to consider. Through my previous life, I was a software developer. And in that world, there were people who did what was called technical writing. And their job was to take software or engineering documents and write up how to use them. And they had to be very, very precise. And it was a skill that, it was one of those skills that I admired very much, but I was also very thankful I didn't have to do it. Because it was difficult, and it was a different kind of mindset, one I didn't have. Very thankful, but these people would write complex things in a way that you could understand them. Now, what I'd like you to imagine is, let's say a very proficient technical writer has a dream of being a romance novelist. Okay? And let's say that they take their dream of being a romance novelist and they start writing an awesome, beautiful story of romance that's got all the elements and trains and different places and all sorts of things, but they write it in the style of a technical writer. Would that be a very popular romance novel? No, it would not. Even if the story is great, it's got to be written in a different way. So when we compare what we're going to read in Acts in the next few weeks, which is a narrative, it's kind of a history. I mean, there's more things to it, but it's like, here's what happened. And if we read Revelation in the same way, well, they're not the same. They're not the same. And they're not doing the same thing. They are both proclaiming the love of Christ. They are both proclaiming the hope of Jesus, but they are doing it in very different ways. So, the book of Revelation is thought of in multiple different ways. So first, I'm going to talk about what we're not going to talk about. Okay? So there is one approach to the book of Revelation, and it's quite popular. It is called the futurist approach. Now, this approach is quite popular, especially here in the United States, not so much in Europe. Our Lutheran tradition typically does not take a futurist approach. Now, can you find Lutheran theologians and pastors who may look at Revelation from a futurist standpoint? Yeah, you can. But that is not what we're going to be talking about. So, the futurist way to look at Revelation, it says that Revelation was written with the idea of a secret code. And if you can decipher this secret code, then you can find out what's going to happen in the future. And all of the symbolism in Revelation, which is tremendous and amazing and, could be nightmare-inducing, is all meant for the future. Now, that's not the approach we're going to take, and there's a couple reasons why. Is that as we study and we look at the world that John paints in Revelation, we're going to get to John in just a moment. There's just so much excitement this morning. Just pardon me. There's so much. Okay. What John paints in Revelation, we can see what's happening with the Roman Empire at the time. Okay? So many believe that it's not predicting the future because the people at the time who were reading this, they understood a message. The message they got a message from Revelation. They weren't saying, I wonder when this is all going to happen. Maybe some did, but also they thought, I see what's happening here. It's different language. John is written in what's called apocalyptic form. Apocalyptic means revealing, hence the word revelation. So John was revealing some truth in a different kind of way. Okay? So we're not going to look at it from a futurist approach. We're going to look at it what John, who was writing, could have meant to the people that he was writing it to, but also what does this book of Revelation say to us today? Because what we're not saying is that, this had only relevance to the first people that read it. No. The book of Revelation has relevance to us today. It is important. It is speaking some pretty important truths that we're going to talk about. But what I am saying is we're not primarily looking at it as a predictor of the future. Okay? Everybody cool with that? Yeah? All right. Okay. So who is this John? Who is this John that wrote this book? Okay? We're going to refer to him as John of Patmos. Okay? The early church thought, this book of Revelation, it's a tidge confusing. We don't really know exactly what it's doing. It's being read, but we're not sure we want to put it in the Bible. So the early people who were getting the Bible together said, no, we got to put it in there because it's written by the same John who wrote the Gospel of John and the letters of John. That was their marketing. It was like, we need it in here because of that. Now, more recent scholarship says probably wasn't the same John because the way John of Revelation writes Greek and the way John of the Gospels write Greek is quite a bit different. Okay? So we're going to refer to John of Patmos. So, called John of Patmos because he wrote the book of Revelation while on Patmos. Patmos is where he lived, not by choice. John was a troublemaker. He caused some problems to some authorities, and the authorities said, I'm sending you to Patmos. Now, Patmos wasn't a penal colony. It wasn't like early Australia, but it was a place where they could isolate him. Okay? So John's on this island, and he writes this from a vision. So what was John's world happening at that time? So John was writing probably about the time that the Romans destroyed the temple in Jerusalem. So shortly thereafter. So much of the imagery that we're going to see in Revelation was something that the author and the people that were listening to it and hearing it and reading it would have been associated with. Because the Romans, at about the year 66 to 70, came in and destroyed Jerusalem. You're like, well, why? I mean, they were just there. Well, you see, after Jesus died, there was a big revolt in Jerusalem. And the Jewish people took control of the place. They took control of the place for a while. Romans, not too happy about this. So they're like, we're going to teach them a lesson. So tens of thousands of troops came in with the Roman army, destroyed Jerusalem. So if you're a Jewish person that's listening or reading some of these works of Revelation, you're seeing, oh, I've seen this stuff before. I've seen this destruction, or I know people who have seen this destruction. So there's that in the air at that time. Okay? Other things that we're going to talk about. So in this reading that we're starting today, John of Patmos is writing, and we're going to see that he's writing to 7 different churches in Asia Minor. And he's all going to give them a little bit of encouragement and say, yes, go church. We know these are persecuting times. We know this is challenging. And I'm encouraging you. But with John, like his compatriot Paul, sometimes encouragement comes with a but. Okay? You're doing great, however. And this however that John is talking about is what we're going to end up focusing on, toward the end of our message today, as well as in the future. So John's like, good job, but here's what you need to worry about. Here's what you need to be concerned with. So most people think that John was from Ephesus, and a city near Ephesus decided, hey, you know what would be great for our city? Is if we had a big statue of a Roman emperor. Okay? Now, contrary to what you might think, the emperor didn't go down to the city and say, hey, city dudes, I'd like a statue, please. Oh no, often it was the other way around. The city decided, you know what would be good for our commerce? You know what would be good for our tourist trade? You know what would be good for our city is if we had a nice statue of the emperor that people could look at and maybe we'd get some traffic with it. So a city near where John was had one of these things. And John was saying, excuse me, as followers of Jesus, whether you're on the city council or not, we frown on this stuff. So a lot of the warnings that John's giving are to people that are sometimes in high places that are working with the empire at the time, and they're calling them to be back as followers of Christ. And we see that a little bit happening in Acts as well. Because who's giving Peter a hard time? Not quite the Romans, not the Romans, but it's the people in charge of the temple. The people in charge are like, Peter, gang, yeah, we know Jesus went through this, but things are good here. We're cool. We got the temple in control. We like what we're doing. I know you're not trying to take over, but you're really creating a disturbance, and we're not fond of that. So please knock it off. You can believe whatever you want, but shut up, is what they're telling Peter. And what's Peter's response? Even if I'd like to shut up, I can't. Spirit won't let me. Okay? And I think the same thing's happening in Revelation. John of Patmos sees this vision, and the people in the city who sent him there are like, John, just shut up. Just shut up. You're so loud, we're just going to put you on another island. Okay? But John would not be shut up. John had a vision, and he wrote that vision down, and he started sharing it. And he started sharing it in a way that was kind of loud, really. Because when you talk about all these things like dragons and allusions to a woman on the 7 hills that's talking about Rome, well, that's kind of loud. That's kind of loud. And it's making people think about things in a way that maybe they hadn't thought about before. And that's what's happening in Revelation. And that's what we're going to continue to look at in Revelation, is what might be happening there, not only for the people of the time that John read it, but hey, is any of this stuff still happening now? Is there anything that we need to be considering in our world here? Because what both Luke in Acts and John in Revelation are giving us encouragement and warning. They're giving us encouragement that to be a follower of Christ, you have to live your life in a certain way to really be a true follower. This is not to say that, unless you find your sin and you stop sinning, you can't be a follower of Christ. No, that's not what they're saying. They're saying the forgiveness is still there. But as part of someone in society, if you're following Christ, you're going to feel uncomfortable. You're going to feel uncomfortable. Because there's going to be certain things that are going to be asked of you by society, and they may be kind of okay, but they may also disrupt what you've been called to do. You've been called to be people who interact with the poor. You've been called people who call for justice. You've been called to be people who are sharing the love and grace of Jesus Christ in both verbal and nonverbal ways, through your thoughts and words and actions. And sometimes society asks you to shut up and not do those things. Sometimes society asks you, will you just please be happy with the way things are? Will you please be happy? We're kind of justice-like in most of this stuff. Some people are getting justice. It's just this one group that we're kind of ignoring with justice. Luke, John, Jesus, none of them say that's okay. Until all our brothers and sisters live under justice, we're not done. Until all our brothers and sisters live under the grace and love of God, we're not done. And my friends, we're not done. Amen.